a pleasure to be here tonight. So many faces, a few familiar faces, and come to speak to you about some things we're doing over in the Dallas area. We're actually doing throughout the Metroplex, but just to fill you in and tell you a little bit about just how this journey just got going. I'm originally from New Orleans. Been here since 2005, September. My wife and my youngest son is in the back there. And I refer to her as my partner in crime. And we have a lot of fun with what we do. We've been actively involved. Is this just okay? I'm sorry. We've been actively involved politically for about 17 years, roughly. 1997, we were living in New Orleans, saw some things happening, and we just couldn't sit on the side anymore, and we decided to try to do something about it. So basically, we got with a group of crazy radicals at the time and said, you know, we want to do something about what we see happening here. And so basically, that's what we began doing, and it's been quite an interesting journey ever since. And I'm pulling some things out here because this is going to help me do this presentation correctly. But I say over the last several months, there's been a lot of things transpiring in my life personally. We recently started a church in the southern sector of Dallas, over in the DeSoto area. We're having services in the Tom Place Marriott Hotel every Sunday at 11 o'clock. And so I'm also a pastor among all the other wonderful things I get to do. Game Changers. Game Changers is an organization that I and several other people put together roughly about a little over 3 years ago. And our purpose is primarily to educate and inform the black community on the issues that we believe the vast majority of people care about. Now, our approach is pretty straightforward and I don't think it's unique. I think it's just straightforward. Now, some people might consider that to be unique because, unfortunately, today we have a lot of people who don't like to tell you exactly what they think. They're too busy worried about you calling them a name, or too busy worried about whether or not you're going to get mad with them. But you know, I refer to myself as an equal opportunity offender. So chances are, if you get offended at something I say, just look at the guy or the girl next to you. Chances are I offended them too. So you're probably in good company. But you know, that just goes with the territory. When we tell people what the truth is, often in today's society, with political correctness being what it is, people they claim to be offended. Now, I don't believe people are really as offended as they claim to be. Often, I think they do that because you've just said something, or they just heard something that disturbs their conscience. It makes them have to deal with something that's not correct in their life. So as a result, they want to shut you down. And they figure if they can cause you to be afraid to say what you're supposed to say, you're going to back down. Well, I can't do that. I can't do that. It's not part of my makeup. And I believe that many Americans, that's a part of their makeup as well. What I'm trying to do is help people understand there's a need for you to stand on the principles that you believe in. Regardless of who it happens to offend, if your principles are correct and rooted and grounded in the truth, you stand firm in those principles and you do not back down under any circumstance. Amen. So Game Changers is basic. It's a 501c3 nonprofit. And the inspiration behind this organization was we believed, the guys who helped me form this organization, which I helped form this because actually it was their idea, was basically that there was a void of truth and accuracy in the discussion of the issues in the black community. If you listen to any black media or black media that black people listen to, you will find that to be very, very true. But you know, that's across the board almost now. It don't really matter who you listen to. You can't even get the truth out of Fox News half the time. Am I right? Can I get an amen? All right. Our purpose is to inform and educate the black community on the issues of the day from a biblical and constitutional perspective. And our goal, as someone said, the lady right here, well, she was right here, said, is to break the mental chains of progressivism through information, education, and activation. Information from the standpoint of dealing with what people hear from day to day in the news. You hear things in the news, and most of the time it comes in the form of sound bites. We take and try to bring that into full context, so when a person gets that information, they can actually understand it better. Education from the standpoint many times of correcting history, sometimes even of teaching history. A couple years ago we showed the video by David Barton, American History in Black and White, and we only showed a portion of it. In one of our meetings, we probably had about 35, 40 people there, and out of that was about 15 teenagers, black young men between the ages of 15 and 17, because one of our members works with a group called Young Life. And so that particular night was their night to meet. So I said, well, just bring those guys on over here. That'll be a great, great opportunity for them to learn some things and us to share some ideas with them. Well, a portion of the video, got to the video, said, in the late 1800s, the Democrat Party, the Ku Klux Klan was started by the Democrat Party. Man, I mean, that room just erupted. We got pause the video for a while, give people a chance to settle down. Even many Republicans had never heard that, and I understand because I had never heard it. So it's really important that we help people understand what the issues is, what the truth is. And one of our missions is to promote and develop a greater awareness of America's Judeo-Christian heritage and how important this heritage has been in the advancement of the black community throughout the years. So we have a bunch of statistics. Some of them you've heard. You've heard about the HIV/AIDS rate in the black community being off the charts. Over 45% of all people who have that disease are black. That's huge, considering it only accounts for 12% of the population. And the risk of infection among black males is 1 in 16, whereas in white males it's 1 in 104. The risk of infection among black females is 1 in 30, whereas in white females is 1 in 588. Out of wedlock birth rate, 72% in the black community, about 50% in the Hispanic community, and about 40% across the board. My friends, that is not something that is good for society from the standpoint of a society being successful as it advances forward. Because we have people who've abandoned the idea of biblical principle, they're not applying it. Even those who claim to hold to it sometimes make compromises that can't be really justified. It's just not an easy thing to do, to take a hard stand on something you know to be true when everybody else is telling you that this is not politically correct. This is not the right thing to do. It's not an easy thing to do. I understand that. But it's not really an option, is it? It's more of a responsibility. See, those of us who know better have to be willing to take the stand, take the fire if there be some, and actually give some back. You see, I'm a fighter, and I believe that we need some fighters in our cause to help us fight this battle, regardless of what you believe, regardless of whether you believe this is true or not. The bottom line is we are and have been for a number of years in a cultural war. There are many people who try to ignore it. And it's unfortunate that they try to do that because many of those people are very, very good people. I say that with a little bit of an exception. Because, just like, give an example. During the Bush years, he referred to several people, he said, were good people. And he said, good people could disagree. Well, the thing is, you have to qualify what's good. See, in my mind, a person may be good on some issues, but overall, we have to consider everything that makes up that individual before we determine whether or not they qualify as being good. So we say a person who believes that we should kill babies in the womb is good. Well, they may be good on some things, but the question is, are they a good person? Especially when it comes to making decisions for your life and mine. Because they have already indicated they have a bad understanding of some things as far as just how life is, right? So we're supposed to trust that they're going to make good decisions elsewhere where they can't get some of the basic things right. And that's where we run into problems. You see, we've been making excuses for a long time for many of the people that we elect to office. Now, I don't necessarily run around and like to bash politicians. Most of what they get, the ones that get it, they get it because they earn it. I have a lot of politicians that are friends of mine. But that does not mean that I can't tell them the truth. As a matter of fact, if they're my friend, I have a responsibility to tell them the truth, right? In other words, if I really care about somebody, I want them to know what the truth is, right? Because if I don't tell them what the truth is, and they make some mistakes and some errors that cause them some setbacks in life, then I played a part in that. But if I tell them what the truth is, and they reject it, at least I gave them the opportunity to make a good decision. So, because of what we see happening in the black community, 72% out of wedlock birth rate, we have people who are never going to know what their legacy is. You know, you hear the terms, the baby daddies and the baby mamas, right? And you hear these terms because people have made up stuff because they can no longer refer to somebody as the father or the mother. I mean, that's street slang, but for all practical purposes, it's really hurtful. As an individual, regardless of whether I was black or not, it bothers me. It bothers me to watch people in those kind of situations where mentally they are so screwed up they have no concept of reality and what's really going on in America. Not just in America, but in life in general. So we talk about what is progressivism. Progressivism is born out of Marxism. It's an ideology that abandons and attacks absolute truth. It is a form of liberalism. And I think that as conservatives and those of us who adhere to principle, it is vital that we make this clear as we make our case to whoever we're talking to. You see, the news media will always take the opportunity to try to bash us, to try to keep us back, to keep us from getting our message out. And we have to be creative and aggressive and adopt the mindset of a warrior and understand that what we're dealing with, my friends, is a war in concept. What we're dealing with, everything from the liberal side, is a form of warfare. Right now, we're being invaded, literally, on the southern border. And we have politicians sitting up here talking about that like this is an academic exercise. Are you kidding me? Thousands, tens of thousands of people coming across a day? This is just the ones, we're only hearing about the ones getting reported that get caught.
Exactly.
And this has been going on for years. Years and years ago, Pat Buchanan went on the air and talked about how we were having tens of thousands of illegal immigrants coming across the border every year. But yet and still, we still have 12 million illegals, and that was 20 years ago. Multiply that a couple hundred times, and then you get a correct answer. You see, what we're dealing with is something that is really, really critical, and it bothers me and a lot of people that I know. And what really trips me out is when people say, well, you're really making too much of this. I say, really? Look, you know, one thing I tell everybody, I said, look, the Lord said in the Word of God that although He said 70 is a normal life, but if you go back into the Old Testament, after the flood, He said that man could live to be 100 to 120. And I think if more of us thought in those terms, we'd probably think about, well, you know, I need to kind of stay young a little longer. So, you know, my hat's off to you, ma'am. You know, it is my honor to be in the presence of somebody like you. I've been shooting for this for a long time. I'm shooting for 120, my friends. You know, I mean, the Lord may not see it that way, but I'm sure working at it. So I encourage you to do so. And if you gotta think about it, if you're thinking in terms of you expect that possibly you could live to be 100, how will you take care of yourself at 40, 50, or 60? See, are you going to take care of yourself like you're going to die at 75 or maybe 150? See, you're going to take care of yourself a little bit different. It's all a matter of perspective, right? So people ask me all the time, well, what is game changers? Well, briefly, a game changer, and I came up with this definition on my own because I was having to explain it so much. A game changer, a person who is determined to work at breaking the middle chain of progressivism through information, education, and activation, is someone, first of all, who trusts in God, not men. They trust in God. You see, because the thing is, men will disappoint us time and time again. I think all of us have experienced to some degree, right? And so a game changer recognizes and understands progressivism in all of its many forms, however it comes at us, regardless of who it comes from, whether it comes from the right or the left, regardless of whether it comes from someone calling themselves a conservative or someone that we know to be a liberal. A game changer is somebody who recognizes that, identifies it, and calls it out. So make sure that everybody else knows exactly what it is. Now when you do that, you also going to get some attention you probably did not want. The question is how you're going to handle it. See? I consider myself a highly frustrated individual.
Me too.
And I say that because I'm too frustrated to be concerned about what somebody think. You know? How many people agree with me? I am entirely too frustrated to be concerned with whether or not somebody think, you know, what they want to call me a name. Look, we have some good names we can call liberals, right? I mean, they all qualify. I mean, you can look them up and actually, you can actually look them up in the dictionary and probably will suit them perfectly. So you got to be creative because you got to have some fun with this because here's the deal. We need to be happy warriors, right? It don't look too good right now. If you take everything into account that's going on, it doesn't look very well, my friends. It looks bad. I don't know how it's going to turn out. I know how we want it to turn out. I know what we're working for. And so it's a matter of while we're doing all of that, in order for us to actually have some fun with this and maintain our sanity and not give ourselves a stroke. In order for us to do that, that requires that we be happy warriors. The way we're going to be happy warriors is to have a certain amount of joy inside of us. See, it's the difference between joy and happiness, right? Happiness depends on what's going on. Joy is something that is with you no matter what's going on. See? So if I have joy inside, then it's going to be easier for me to actually do what it is the Lord said do and actually demonstrate that and show others how to be joyful as well. You see, there's a reason why Paul tells us to pray unceasingly. Don't mean walk around like this all the time. It means that be prayer-minded, where we're always conscious of what the Word of God says as to how we live life. What we say to somebody, when we speak to them, when we talk to them, right? Always looking for an opportunity to encourage people and share the knowledge and the wisdom that the Lord has placed inside of us and given us the opportunity to possess, right? So, I came up with some questions because you see, Game Changers Challenge, we're going to pass it around in a little while, but the Game Changers Challenge is the thing we use to break the ice with people who typically, at least they think they don't agree with us. Now, most of the time, you got to think about it. I talk to liberals all the time. You know, I'm surrounded by it. You know, people say, you know, it's real funny because, you know, I'm a precinct chair, and in my neighborhood, you know, when I first got active in local politics, you know, we were working on the Broden campaign, and so a friend of mine said, take some shoe polish and put on the window of your van, Democrats for Broden, right? So we did that. It didn't work. It didn't work. Might have raised some questions, right? But the thing is, I go in some other neighborhoods and some other parts of the town, and I see these areas that's a lot more Republican. They'll have a sign that says, precinct chair lives here. Republican precinct chair. Say, I don't know if I want to put that. I don't know if I want to put that sign on my front lawn. You know, gotta use some wisdom, right? I might come out, man, they ate my car or something. You know, I don't know. But you know, I came up with some questions because this is what I found out. If we actually talk to people about the issues that they care about, that we care about, they're all the same. This is not about a Republican and Democrat thing in a real sense. It's all about what the issues are and where people stand on those things. So that's what we got to talk about. So I came up with some issues. I said, some questions. I said, and I call this my questions to ponder. And this is just a few of them. I came up with actually 22 of them, and I'm still working on them. And some of them have 6 or 7 sub-questions, so they can get pretty lengthy. But I'm just going to go through a couple of them here, just to kind of give you an idea. One says, when you make decisions, you're talking to somebody you don't know very well. When you make decisions, do you generally try to do what is right or what is most beneficial at the time? And then wait and see what answer they give you, right? Because you want to find out what they're going to tell you. Let them think it through. Let them process it. Give them a minute. And they'll tell you, they'll say, oh, well, I don't know. Typically, I do what's most beneficial at the time. You help them understand, well, you're a person that believes in situational ethics. In other words, your ethics don't cross the board. They kind of apply here, but don't apply there. Help them understand that. But I think if they think it through, at least they would want to move away from that. Yeah, you know, I asked a lady one time, I said, do you have a set of principles that generally govern the decisions you make? And she said, yes, I do. And I asked her, what are they? Tell me. You know, I want to know. And then the next question was, do you violate them often, seldom, or never? Now they tell me they don't ever violate their own principles, then I know they're lying to me because everybody violates them sometimes, right? Nobody's perfect. You know, it's just like somebody telling you I don't lie. Everybody lies sometimes, right? Even the smallest lie is still a lie. Anytime you tell somebody something that's not true, it's a lie. So that's a little bit of what it is. But the thing is, this is what we deal with. Hold on one second. And I do this primarily so I can keep myself on track because, you know, I'm a talk show host. And that was my hobby for a while. And I really like it. Eventually I want to get back into it. And you know, one thing about talk shows is we know how to run our mouths. There's times I went to the radio station when I was in New Orleans, and I went to the station. I didn't have time to actually prepare anything. You know, I mean, it's just a 1 hour a week program, so you know, I figured I should be able to run my mouth for an hour. Look, I sat there in front of that microphone for a solid hour, and I think I got 1 or 2 phone calls, and I sat there and ran my mouth for a solid hour, and never, no dead air, never missed a beat. Why? Because, you know, I'm sitting in, I'm taking in information all week, and I'm about to burst. My wife actually says it was therapeutic that I got on the air because I got a way to release. She said I was driving her nuts, so I needed to go and do something. So, you know, we started looking into it, and that's how it transpired. But basically, you know, that's what I did. But anyway, our challenge today is principle versus preference. The old saying is, if you stand for nothing, you'll fall for anything. And principle, a person with principle is one who stands with conviction on ideals that are rooted in truth. And I'm not talking about any kind of truth, I'm talking about absolute truth. There's only one truth. Regardless of what people think, it's America, you're free to disagree, but there's only one truth. It comes from the Holy Scripture. Preference is, well, I want to be in charge regardless of the compromise I have to make. So the question I have for you today, will you stand on principle moving forward, or will you play politics? Will you stand on the principles that you know to be true, regardless of the situation, regardless of how uncomfortable it is at the time, or maybe even permanently, or will you play politics? You know, William Winthrop, one of our founders, he said, men must be controlled either by the Bible or the bayonet, or today will be the gun. Men are going to be either controlled by something that is within or something that is without. See? And because we have a society that has abandoned what is supposed to control us within, we're slowly moving in a direction where we're being controlled by what's without. And most people find it to be highly unsettling, extremely uncomfortable, and most people can't. I find this to be amazing. People who actually know what's going on are in denial, I believe, at this time, where they won't accept the fact that America is moving into a police state. Yes, it is. When you have, you know, cops dressed up like they're ready to go to war, coming in calling themselves SWAT teams, and actually running in somebody's house, like in Newtown, wherever that was, Boston, last year. And, you know, every time I watch the videos, it upsets me. Because after all of that, the guy wasn't even in somebody's house. It was a matter of fact, it was only after they told the people you can go outside, they even found the guy. So had everybody been outside all the while, they probably would have caught him a lot quicker. His face was plastered all over the news, right? But what is the other problem that nobody's not talking about? Nobody's talking about there. Now, I actually did a YouTube video called "Where's the Outrage?" Where's the outrage when, okay, just remember, everything I say from this point on, this is my disclaimer. I'm not talking for Game Changers or FP. This is my opinions, and my opinion is only. All right. Where's the outrage when people are taken out of their house at gunpoint and told to march down the street with their hands on their head and treated like criminals? Where's the due process? Because you're looking for a bomber. Are you kidding me? And here's the other problem. In that state, they're not allowed to own guns. Okay, so that's a part of the problem, right? Well, I heard somebody say, well, they'll never get away with that in Texas. I said, you'd be surprised. I'm not going to take any polls here, but if you happen to be an individual that don't own a gun, my friends, you are ripe for the pickings. Okay? If you don't own a gun and ammo,
That's right.
In target practice every now and then, you're all right for the pickings. You know? It's just the way, it's just the reality. It's the reality of what it is. You know, these are the issues we deal with. We talk about our elected officials like to tell us about how they want to improve the highways because we have so many people moving here. You know, and Governor Perry runs around the country and says, move to Texas. And I'm saying, if you're liberals, stay where you are. You screwed up everything. Come over here straight and screw this one up. We don't need any more liberals here. Believe me, we got enough already. Trust me. Trust me, we have too many liberals here now. Okay?
Maybe we can do a 2-for-1 swap.
I'll go for that one. And then we have the situation going on in the Middle East with Israel. We have the Islamic invasion. I've been talking about that lately, but that's a real problem. We have the border invasion. You know, our elected officials have to be held accountable. When a politician, somebody finally decided to let us defrost a little bit. When our politicians, when they tell us one thing before the election and then tell us something else after the election, my friends, those of us who elected them need to be in their office, letting them have it. We need to burn up their phone lines. Look, let me tell you something. The motto goes, if you can't take the heat, get out of the kitchen. We need to make that kitchen so hot they don't dare. I'm serious. They don't dare cross us with their stupid policies. Give us them lame excuses about why it is that we should support toll roads. Are you kidding me? The worst thing I discovered when I came to Texas was toll roads. Hate them doggone things. And it makes it even worse now because you're seeing your bill in the mail. You don't even know what you're paying. Look, a couple of weeks later, I got a bill the other day, earlier this month, from last year. I called that a day and paid the latest. I said, why did I get a bill from last year? She said, well, because we decided that unless you drive, we let the bills accumulate a little bit to make it economical for us. Well, at least they weren't trying to charge me a fine, But I mean, just the absurdity of it. Those things get lost. So all of a sudden you don't pay the bill on time and then you got this ridiculous fine. But, we have politicians, many who call themselves conservatives, say, well, I think it's a good idea that we put a device on your car and charge you a vehicle miles tax. Talking about, don't you? Yeah. That's right. See, a vehicle miles tax. So we're going to charge you according to how many miles you drive. In Texas? In Dallas alone. You'd be broke, man. It's outrageous. And so it just goes on and on and on. So, the thing I say is that when we're talking about these issues, regardless of what the issue is, regardless to who the person is, it's always so vital that we adhere to our principles. We remind ourselves why it is that we believe what we believe. You see, anger is what the Lord said to not do. He said, be angry and sin not. What does he mean by that? If you're going to be angry about something righteous. Righteous indignation. In other words, I'm going to get angry about what I know the Lord gets angry about. Injustice. When people do things that are clearly wrong to other people, regardless of whether they do it through the judicial system or whether they do it through some other means, we should be upset about it because it was wrong. You see, I enjoy watching old TV shows because it reminds me of when America had a lot more common sense, right? Because what we see now, we see a lot of stuff on TV that does not describe what we really believe. It's describing what they want us to believe, right? How many people do you talk to in the course of your day or of your week where you will have just a regular conversation and you'll bring up something that's very commonsensical and they will tell you, good people, maybe sometimes Christians, people who have an understanding of what truth is, and will tell you, oh, well, we can't do that because that would be offensive to the homosexuals. I don't get that. See, because there's no way for the Republican Party any other party, any group of people to ignore what God says is right for the benefit of expedience. And expect, I mean, you can expect it, but it just won't happen. You're not going to be successful. See, 20-something years ago when I got involved in the Republican Party, it was clear, at least regardless of what you think about Newt Gingrich, it was clear under the Gingrich leadership that you understood where the Republican Party stood on issues of immigration. Obviously, there was some compromise that took place once they actually took power. But you understood where they stood on the issue of abortion. You understood where they stood on the issue of taxes, where they stood on the issue of the homosexual movement. Right? And often when I talk about the homosexual movement, I don't just talk about same-sex marriage because that's the cream of the crop. They've been shooting for that for years. They were shooting for that 20 years ago, and we were telling you, I'll rephrase that. We were telling the masses that there's a problem. And that's what they want. And most people, oh no, they don't want that. I think about 10 years ago, people came to reality that wasn't true. They didn't want that. They wanted it all along. But they don't really want that, do they? They don't really want marriage. They want to destroy marriage. See? That's the purpose. Because you got to understand, and this is how, you know, when I listen to certain people talk, my tolerance levels got to the point where I just can't listen to certain people anymore. Because I want people who make perfect sense to me like that. I don't want somebody who's going to beat around the bush, that's going to play games, because we don't have that kind of time anymore. See, when we listen to people talk, we want people to maybe jump to the conclusion of where this is going to end up. In order to help people understand, after you jump to the conclusion, I'll come back and explain to people how you got to that conclusion. See? In order to help people understand, there's a need for us to, yes, identify this problem correctly right up front. Because when we don't, we pay the price. And that's the price we're paying right now today. So I'm asking you, as we depart today, consider this. In your mindset, as you're working on considering how you're going to address the issues and the people that you talk to going forward, retrain your brain a little bit, if necessary. I realize that with everybody, I mean, with some people this is not necessary, but if necessary, retrain your brain a little bit. Understand, what we're dealing with here, my friends, is a form of warfare. Mental warfare, hopefully never get to physical warfare, but we're dealing with cultural warfare, all kinds of warfare we're dealing with. And we have to address this as warriors and adapt a warrior mentality going into this fight. And this fight don't end, unfortunately. It is necessary for us at times to take a bit of a reprieve to refresh and recharge, but this fight, my friends, don't end. It's getting worse, and it will be worse. You know, I almost can't tolerate the news anymore, because every day is a new disaster. Another plane went down today somewhere, right? Mm-hmm. Okay. Like the third one this week. Okay? So I'm saying is that these problems are escalating. And I'm listening to these guys who say, oh, well, the president doesn't understand. Oh, yeah, he understands perfectly. You see, you need to understand that President Obama is anti-American. Okay? Plain and simply. If you understand that, everything else he does makes perfect sense. If you're not willing to accept that, then you're going to have to explain, give all those crazy explanations that only make sense to academics, and I'm not an academic. So, but I thank you for having me today. It was fun, and I hope to be back soon.